it is like can potentially be a co-op game. The game hasn't technically started until they have like selected which color Yoshi they want to be, and they hit the OK button. And so yeah, we're just seeing a lot of the setup in terms of story and all that kind of stuff. So the timer should be coming real shortly. Yeah, it's the game is pretty much how is it usually described? Like a 2D platformer in a 3D space. So it is just primarily 2D platforming, and you'll see see how it interacts in a 3D space. There are some fun little speed tech things, most notably being egg climbing and egg jumping, and just being able to use eggs to kind of bypass certain roadblocks in the game that they try and get you to do these certain mechanics or use these certain tools in the game in order to get through it. And a lot of the routing in this game has just been like, well, if I have an egg, I can just like bypass a lot of this. And yeah, here we go. We are getting this race underway. Classic green for Bebe, and the pink for chillcito. I think chillcito currently has the record because they just like beat it like earlier this week or something like that, or last week. About a week ago, they beat the world record again. So both of them definitely really good at this game right now. And one thing to note about each level is that there will be a set amount of flowers. It's usually like between 5 and 8 or something along those lines. And then there will also be a flower for getting 100 coins of the gold coins, one for having full health at the end of the level, and also for getting all the red coins. And one thing we saw at the very start is both of them going into the menus, and that is switching the aiming method so that the eggs come out pretty much as quick as possible, because with the default setting you can't really have that clean use of eggs. And we see it right there from Bebe, just using the eggs to essentially climb up a wall by throwing it and having it bounce back, and it will just bounce and it will bounce Yoshi up just that little bit more. And that's one thing that we'll see an awful lot over the course of this run, is utilizing eggs to get through various platforming things ahead of time. And now, one thing that is also in this game, there's a lot of, well, I say a lot, there's a few of these missions levels where there will be these item collection things where you have to collect these 3 items to rebuild an item. So rebuilding a train in this instance, and they will be needing to have a certain amount of eggs because they want to get pretty much everything that they can in terms of flowers and the gold coins and also the health. And there will be a couple that they'll get along this train ride, and we get them now because this is like an auto-scroller section anyway, so we don't really need to be getting them ahead of time and wasting time getting them when we could just do it at the same time as going through this auto-scrolling section. We can see they are both neck and neck. A few little aiming flubs there from Bebe that's allowed chillcito to kind of even it back up, as we see both of them are going to finish off the first stage very much neck and neck. The V, yeah, that's one thing that both of these two have definitely embraced, is the VTuber life, and I don't know, it's fun. Right, yeah. So a lot of the auto-scroller levels, you will end up getting all of the flowers, like the 100 coins, the health, the red coins. Getting red coin flowers is very rare in the speedrun because a lot of the time they are in like really not ideal ideal spots. You have to go out of the way and you have to throw eggs at like really odd things in like a corner. Usually you're only going to get the red coin flowers in auto-scrolling levels, or some of the there are some vehicle levels which we can get into a little bit later. One thing about this game also is that there are costumes that you can get in this game, and they actually provide a functional utility. The costumes act as armor, and so if you get hit while you have a costume on, you won't take the damage. But because it takes about a minute to actually go uh, into the menu and all that stuff and actually get the costume and go through that whole thing, it takes too long to actually go get it. That it's just easier to, just get good at the game and not just don't get hits. It's simple as that. Alright, now into this second level. Like, it's been so long since I played this, and like since I've seen it in English, that I cannot remember the names of a lot of these levels. But the second one is like, this is one of the optimizations that I saw from Bebe on the left side. Instead of going over the top, just going underneath that big ball was just like one of those things where I was looking over and I was like, that, of course, why not just take that one? It's just so much easier instead of just like taking this slow path over the top, and it was especially like right there, instead of waiting for the whole the platform to lower down, just use an egg to climb up. And we'll see that quite a bit over the course of this run. There are some of the flowers in these levels that are locked behind kind of timed events, and a lot of the time they won't end up going for them unless there are certain timed events, timed flowers that are kind of easy to do in a very quick amount of time. And also one thing that I noticed most recently about runs on this level is just like managing resources and like having to utilize actually not just the eggs but also the shells that they can get very infrequently in that level to actually get those few flowers a little bit quicker than you otherwise would. And both of them actually still neck and neck in this race. Even though there were some subtle differences in some of the pathing in some of the segments, they ended up pretty much on the exact same pace. And yeah, now into the third level. This is also going to end with the first boss fight. So this is more of like a mini boss at the end of this one, but yeah, it is pretty much a boss fight, and we'll see how they play out. A lot of the bosses in this game do have pretty much developer intended speed strats, because there are extra flowers at some points for some of the bosses where it is like defeat the boss in X amount of time, which by playing it kind of in a casual manner, you are not going to get that time. It is, you have to actually know these rather more specific speed strats to actually beat these times. We can see them both going through this a little bit slower than from chillcito. And yeah, one of the things is just, as I was mentioning before, just optimizing just movement throughout the levels. Optimizing which flowers are going to be gotten, because there's a lot of the later flowers which can be very, very slow, and even when there's some of the later levels that do have like 8 or 9 flowers possible in a level, a lot of them are not very convenient or fast. So if you just get as much of them as you can early on, you are going to be essentially banking them up. And another thing to mention when it comes to routing for this game is that even though you do have like your set path, there are missable flowers, so you have to kind of have a bunch, like a checklist of backups just in case you do end up missing one in one level or another for a bunch of different reasons. Actually, baby, end up missing that quick phase there on the second hit of this boss, so chillcito is actually going to take a pretty significant lead. Well, about as significant as you could get at this point, because we've seen how close they've been. But yeah, just missing that quick shot on that second phase there from Bebe is going to cost him a little bit of time, but it's definitely not going to put him out of it just yet. There's a long way to go. As I mentioned, we've got at least another 2 hours of this, and there's a lot of chances to make some really tough tricks. There's a very long and difficult elevator skip that can happen later on in this run, and if you don't get it, you kind of just lose a couple of minutes. And yeah, one thing to note just about the aesthetic of this game, because it's called Crafted World, everything is kind of made out of craft materials, and it has that kind of vibe, and it's kind of cute in that whole thing. As we get into the third world, you can see already there's. I was talking earlier about vehicles. The first one is a mech. So we'll get to see that in the following level. But before that, we'll just have to go through, what is it, Poochie's tape trail? We get to see Poochie for the first time in this game. Yeah, just get in the mech, Yoshi. And Yoshi will get in the mech eventually. This is one of the levels where egg jumping and egg climbing ended up being like one of the first levels where it's like, oh, this is definitely important that we do this kind of mechanic, because otherwise you're having to wait for Poochie, which can take a little bit of extra time. Like right there, instead of waiting for the tape to go all the way around, you just use an egg and just climb your way up there. It's just that simple. And when I was also mentioning at the start that this is kind of a 2D platform in a 3D space, you see there's like a foreground and a background. Oh, actually just jumping right over the top there and just not having to bother about stepping back for go the more intended route. But everyone, or both of them, doing quite nicely on this stage. Nothing going awry just yet. This next flower, there was one at the start where they both would just throw an egg just straight above them, and it would hit the flower off screen. That one they did have to kind of take a little bit slower, because they have to. The flower isn't even on the screen until you move the camera up that little bit, so they have to kind of get that extra lift from the flutter jump to make sure that the flower is actually going to be there. You have to wait for Poochie. And this right here on chillcito, this little squirrel that's spinning on that tape, there's no way of getting before that. You always have to wait. Every time I keep on thinking, like every time I've done a run of this, I'm always like, surely there's got to be some way for us to beat this cycle, but no, you can't. You just got to wait for it to pull back, and if you land on it, it's going to stun it for a second, so you have to be very careful that you don't accidentally hit it. And yeah, so that is going to be Poochie's tape trail. And one thing that we see now is that all of these levels have a reverse side. We will not be doing any of the reverse sides of these maps because that's just not really efficient, even though there are some much easier flowers to actually get from reverse sides. You're not really progressing yourself through the world, so it's just easier to just get the flowers from stages that you were already going to be doing. And now here we come to the very first of the vehicle levels. And as mentioned before, Yoshi needs to get into the mech. And it is all just an auto-scroller that you cannot gain time on, but you can definitely lose time on. If you just set up against any of these obstructions, that will store you out for just a fraction amount of time, but that can definitely add up. Ideally, you get everything in this because it is an auto-scroller, and everything is pretty much a gimme. Well, I say a gimme, but I always find ways to end up missing out on flowers in these auto-scrolling levels. But ideally, you get everything in these auto-scrollers. If something is missed out, that is one of those situations where other these racers will have to figure out, all right, what are some good backup flowers that I could get somewhere down the line. It could be in the next level, it could be one way towards the end where it's a little bit more efficient. It's just, yeah, just they're kind of wrecking this town with this Yoshi mech for the time being. And yeah, hitting all of these signs has to be done because by hitting all of the signs, it spawns in the red coins, which you cannot get otherwise. So if they were to miss any of the signs, they will not get the red, get some of the red coins, and then they'll miss out on a flower. And as mentioned, they'd have to look for one elsewhere. And chillcito, yeah, is actually going through this quite cleanly. Have to time taking out those last few blocks. Have to time it because once you get a certain way through those last few blocks, that truck with the flower would start going away. And if you stall out at any moment, it can just get out of reach, and then you'll again miss a flower. And I don't need to repeat that every single time. But yeah, there's not much, as mentioned, not much time to be gained in there. You kind of have to hope that you just do it flawlessly and that your opponent kind of just stalls out a little bit or maybe misses a flower here or there, but you're generally going to be an assured maximum there. Well, maybe a little bit low on the scores, but managed to get all of them, so everything is just fine. What's after this? Big Paper Peak. And here's where we start to get into some of the more interesting levels in terms of design, and also the way in which the routing has kind of been developed for these stages. And yeah, these two are the number 1 and 2, and they have been trading the world record back between the two of them over the past month, like close to like half a dozen times. So they have been very much getting ready for this race. And if you're looking for the best of this game, you're looking at the right two people. They have definitely pushed this game to the best that it has, or that it is currently. There's still probably room for optimizations here or there, but as it is right now, they are definitely the best runners of this game. And yeah, we see these little bomb lads. They'll make more of an appearance later throughout this level, but just trying to get as much eggs as possible for some later shenanigans, and also having to grab this cloud with the health, because there is no other way to get health in this level. And as mentioned, you need to get full health if you want an extra flower. And yeah, just going through the stage quite nicely. Bebe just a little bit on that that flower, just holding up a little bit. And here we see the first instance of an egg jump. Essentially, the way it works with an egg jump is once you jump up, you have to kind of input down and egg throw very close together, because if you hit down while you're in the air too soon, you'll just instantly ground pound. And if you hit the egg throw button a little too soon, you are going to end up throwing it in a different direction. So the timing of the egg jumping is something that they definitely need to get. Oh, actually, maybe going for the kind of slower strat, but it's allowing them to actually get through without actually pushing that minecart. So nicely done. It didn't really gain them too much time, but that is one of the things that you can do with these egg jumps. And also, one thing you also could see from that is that you kind of have infinite flutter if you time it right. You can just infinitely flutter in place, which has some uses in terms of trying to get past certain chasms in this game. But yeah, that was definitely one of those swag strats coming out from Bebe, because it's not the most efficient, and if that goes wrong, you're in a terrible spot. And Coming into the next level, which is Whistle Stop Rails. This one is kind of a half an auto scroller. There's an awful lot of auto scroller in this level, but it's broken up by just like a regular segment where you have to kind of get a bunch of extra items to fix the train again. And yeah, I do believe the game categories should be getting changed at some point. I don't really have control of that, so someone will end up taking care of that shortly. But yeah, I think one thing I saw recently is that at least Bebe was actually getting all the red coins in this level, whereas that wasn't the case, at least earlier in this year. We'll see how that goes. That may have been just from a runway Mr. Flower at some point, but we'll see if he turns left here. He does, so he's going to be getting the red coins out of this level. And that is one of the very few timed flowers that, at least one of the flowers, the timed flowers that will flip the perspective, and you have to just throw an egg at the correct flower, and that's it. Some levels it's very convenient to do it, like right here, but some of the other ones not so much. Yeah. Oh, actually, we're not fixing up the train, we're fixing up the track. And one thing that's very specific to this, essentially the speed tech for this kind of segment is if you have no eggs, you will throw your parts as though they were eggs. Usually, you would only be able to throw the parts at the train track if you were standing on that little divot just before it, but that is just way too slow. Instead of having to go all the way around and having to do it there, you can just stand on top of that building, have no eggs, and you will just be able to throw the track parts from all the way back there, and it's much quicker. And now we're coming into the second half of the auto scroll section, which every now and then I would just lose health on because I just get very complacent, because auto scrolls can be a little bit of a bit of a mental drain, and I'm just going to spoil it now. There's more than a few auto scrollers that we'll be coming across in this game. There's a few auto scrollers, there's a few vehicle levels, so and there's a patch in a stretch of levels somewhat soon where there will be, over the course of 4 levels, 3 auto scrollers. So get ready to enjoy that. It is one of the parts of the run that I kind of tune out for the most part. But like the levels are still like, you need to be able to execute properly on them, because if you miss out on any flower in any of those auto scrollers, well, those were gimmies essentially. And missing out on those, you need to lose time elsewhere in order to catch up. And it seems that not too much time has been lost. From Bebe, he did end up going for those extra red coins, and we'll be getting that final red coin right there in that box towards the end. So technically, well, they're essentially doing somewhat slightly different routes when it comes to the flowers. Bebe already having one additional flower to chillcito, but that is one that he's not going to have to pick up somewhere else, so we'll see how that kind of influences how some of the later stages go, how it's going to play out, because eventually chillcito is going to have to get that flower somewhere. Able to... Oh. This is one of the levels that I end up putting a lot of time into, because there's some very specific cycles that you kind of need to... Yeah, we can see chillcito like getting a little bit caught up a little bit as they're trying to hold on to this magnet, because holding onto it allows them to essentially skip this first segment of Mouse's just kind of stealing away a magnet from you, and you have to get it back by knocking them down and picking up or essentially stealing back the magnet from them. And so Chillcito has actually skipped some of the flowers that would have been picked up in this that can be picked up early on in this level, which I believe Bebe did pick up. So he's going to have some more wiggle room to work with later on in this. But in terms of just getting through the level, it's... Oh, actually. Yeah, that's one of the things, like, if you don't have too many in the way of eggs, and if you bundle one of the shots, you're then kind of scrambling a little bit, trying to find out, all right, where are the eggs? Where can I get some eggs to try and redo this trick? And so both of them have had a little bit of a blunder in this stage. It's definitely one of those levels that I can kind of trip you up if you need to like execute incredibly well on this level, and they're able to get through it all right. Did I'm just trying to think. So Chillcito got 3 flowers from that one. Did Pepe get the one at the start? We'll see when ends up going through the check. And so coming into this one, he did. So technically, Bebe is 2 flowers up going into the same stage. So that's probably going to kind of bring him back into kind of racing contention, because later on, Chillcito is going to have to pick those ones up. But now we come into the first big boss fight. The Tin Can Condor, I believe it's called.
前のクラフトもこれですよね。必ず太い人。
ああ、そうですね。ちょっとぽっちゃりした感じの人ですね。あとここ実際は映像などが流れるムービーが流れる。
There aren't too many ways to speed this up beyond what has already been kind of figured out in this. Again, a lot of these things is like you can't really be gaining time too much, but instead you can lose time by missing a cycle. We saw earlier on that first kind of a mini boss, Bebe ended up missing that second cycle, and which took a little bit of extra time to actually to finish off that mini boss. So we see the Tin Can Condor. The mechanic is just throw that magnet on it and then ground pound onto its balloon head. And then you have to do that 3 times in classic Nintendo fashion. Just the rule of 3. The magnet will be on one of the mice that ends up popping out of those straws, and timing the magnet to try and get the condor on its first pass through is definitely what would be advisable and what they want to see. Both of them managed to get that on the second phase, managing to get the quick attachment of the magnet, so it's really nice. It's a rather straightforward boss in this. Well, there are a lot of the bosses are fairly straightforward. A lot of the mechanics are rather straightforward. And actually, a slight optimization that we see at the very end there from Chillcito. The actual level won't end until everything has been picked up. So because there were all of those coins and those extra hearts on that left side of the stage, if he didn't pick those up, it would have delayed just like a little bit. So by throwing the egg and using the egg to pick up all of those coins, and by also standing at the center where Yoshi wants to be at the end, it just speeds it up just a little bit. And that's one of those things I was talking about at the start, is that a lot of the time gain in this speedrun is just little optimizations here and there that saves not much time, but enough where it adds up over the course of a 2 hour plus run. So we got the first of the gems that we needed. We see the next 3 of them, and each of those gems is hidden behind another boss. We'll get to those eventually. this isn't an auto-scroller, but after this one is when we get the if they go towards the north path, then we'll get to see like a whole bunch of auto-scrollers. Unfortunately, but what's this one called again? Spring Sprung Trail. God, the names of these levels I have not like thought of in ages. But a lot of them are tongue twisters, annoyingly enough. But this is also like one of those real fun stages because of the just like optimization of movement. And a lot of this level is just holding right for the most part, but also trying to find ways to just weave in getting the flowers when you can. We saw on that that flower that was hovering above a pit. One thing that you can do in this game is kind of cancel out of a ground pound mid-air. So if you're able to do that, they were able to do the cancel out of the ground pound, get down to it as quick as possible, and then just use the egg climbing to get back to safety and continue racing through the level. Yeah, just with the pace of this level, going for those 2 timed flowers, it's really not efficient, and also they're really annoying timed flowers to do. So you don't really want to do either of those. But it seems that both of them are getting through this level quite nicely, and as I say that, Bebe ends up having a little bit of issue getting the egg into that little container to get that final flower. Commentator curse, I guess, in that regard. They both managed to get all of the flowers that they wanted from this level, I do believe. Moving on after this. Oh yeah, it's an auto scroller. It's essentially a shooting gallery. A lot of the auto scrollers in this end up being like kind of shooting galleries. Especially this one where you just have to hit a whole bunch of multi-moles. Yeah, ideally you get every single one of the flowers from this level. Oh, and also one thing about the fact that it's an auto-scroller, it's a fairly slow auto-scroller, and it's this pace pretty much the entire way through, so we have some time, I guess I can say. A lot of time to get impatient, a lot of time to screw something up, because I know I sure have done so in the past. Because you just get impatient just waiting around for the screen to scroll through. And with those boxes that scroll through certain items, either coins, eggs. Yeah, it's just coins and eggs. It doesn't really matter which ones of those you get because you should be able to get everything you need throughout the level anyway. Let's see that. Yeah, there really is not too much to say about this one. It's just picking up everything over the course of the level. I'm not sure what more I can say about an auto-scroll level. Yeah, one thing I end up doing in this auto-scroller, just because I can, is just doing like random egg jumps, because you got the time and the space to do it. One of the, I wouldn't say the most difficult parts, but one part that can kind of trip people up is just getting that specific that box in the background, because all of those boxes in the levels will also have one of the red coins, and so they'll need to get all of those in these auto scroll levels. Because of those platforms would unravel and then you just fall through them. The timing can kind of mess some people up, and these coins here that are kind of below the stage, they can also kind of trip people up the first time through it. Yeah, just trying to get the timing for these these pretty much disappearing platforms. They can get a little bit funky at times. Yeah, they've managed to get pretty much anything that could be a bit of an issue to pick up, which is unsurprising. These two are really good at this game, so unsurprising that they're able to just get everything without too much of an issue.
青色へ。
ちょっと最低微妙。
黒のような紺のような難しいところですね、確かに。
And very shortly, we'll get to see the real big
みたいな風
Monty Melons.
じゃあ今回は
And they're big.
青色で
Big chunky lads.
いただきますね、青色の卵。
They take an extra egg to hit.
ちなみに、ちょくちょく出てくる
Yeah, anyone who is only just now coming into the stream, welcome to the English restream of RTA in Japan. I am Geo Phoenix, and this is a Yoshi's Crafted World 80% race between chillcito and Bebe, who are the current number 1 and 2 on the ladder when it comes to world record times for this game. So these are inarguably the two best players of this game in this format. So,
ドヤ顔。
yeah.
いや、綺麗に選別しましたね。
So far, it has been a pretty good race. There's been a few little hiccups here and there, but not too much where you kind of abandon a run for.
してあげないと増えていかないから。
But in a race, it's one of those things that can kind of play in the back of your mind. It's like, well, I did spend like an extra second or two on this segment, so is that going to cost me at some point?
ちなみに、
Theoretically, no. But who knows? As we come into, what is this segment called? Dino Desert? Yeah, that's it. And there's some big dino skeletons. This first one is an auto scroll. The next one is. Yeah, something got revamped. Yeah, the game category is still looking to be updated.
はい。
もう自分でも分からなくなってる。
あともう一ステージ呼びにくいステージあるんですよね。解説の練習の時に何回も噛みました。ちなみにまだうまく言えてません。
あれは難しい。
うん、もう早口言葉の域に
早
いたし。
口言葉ですね。もうまさに文字通り早口言葉ですね。ちょっと今のでこのステージが少し嫌いになったかもしれません。
Yeah, one of the fun things about this level, you get this big dinosaur skeleton head that you get to use as a bit of a battering ram.
ステージ解説遅れてしまいましたが。
It's one of the special alternate endings, yeah. When things get a little bit too out of hand.
恐竜の頭蓋骨をかぶって進んでいくステージですね。今脱げちゃってますけど、もう一回かぶり直します。ここ兵法もかぶっているのでとっても可愛らしいんですよね。かぶってる兵法結構強気になってるのかわかりません。
Yeah, and actually, you need to be rather careful with these skulls, because if you end up taking out too many of the blocks beneath, it will end up kind of locking yourself out of getting some of the flowers because they're just up a little bit too high.
なるほど。その
And also, it takes a little bit extra time because you kind of stall out for a fraction, busting through the blocks. So, ideally, trying to break as few blocks as possible while getting through, and just getting the flowers that you need out of that one.
これにて、ステージクリアですね。
Yeah, that part in Diablo 3 where you just go into this segment where it's all just real happy and very, very colorful, and that's definitely what we're seeing with Yoshi's Crafted World. It's a very, very colorful game.
次のステージは逃げろ骨サウルスの遺跡。
And yeah, as I mentioned, this is going to be another auto scroller, so ideally all of them are going to be able to get each and every one of these flowers. You just got to be, once it's all kicked off, you're just running away from this big old skeleton.
追いかけられるので
めちゃくちゃ怖いですこれ。
もうちょっとビジュアル怖ければ
これ以上怖かったら
And I think after this one is going to be another one of the vehicle levels. You don't get to pilot a mech again, unfortunately. Each of the vehicle levels are different and they control incredibly differently. The next one is actually a plane that you get to kind of commandeer. And the way in which they allow you to control it is actually rather interesting. But when I was first learning the game was rather frustrating because, well, at least for me, because it can be very fidgety. And we'll find out.
モーション中とかはひるまなくなっちゃう。
We'll see once we get to the next level. We still got to get through this auto scroller, which
あと
is a bit of a breezy one. You're not too worried about missing out on flowers here, unless you get a bit complacent, which,
もし見かけたらちょっと活かしておいてください。
well, I've definitely done that.
わかりました。
この緑で
But I doubt either of these two will be missing out on anything.
この怯えてるんですよね。ああ、兵法が
兵法が
やられてしまった。
なんだこった
There is one, I will say, like I did mention earlier that pretty much all of the auto scrollers, you will get all of the flowers, like including red coins, which in any other level are just very inconvenient to get for the most part. There is one auto scroller level later, which they will not get the red coins because it's in a real awkward spot and it's very much not convenient to get it, even though it is in an auto scroller. Because one thing about this game is that with the auto scrollers,
そろそろですね。
well, at least some of them,
サウルス後半になります
you
ので
can't really gain much time, but you can definitely lose some time by kind of just kind of messing up in certain segments or just like going a little bit slow through some areas. It's definitely possible to lose time, so neither of them want to do that.
アパレルブランド無敵時間のご協賛いただいております。無敵時間によるグッズなどを
Alright, they're finally getting through it.
ちょっと待って。
Still not too much between them, even like, Bebe does have a couple of extra flowers that they picked up in some of the earlier levels that chillcito did not pick up. So that is something to take into account, even though chillcito is currently in the lead just in how far through the game they are. He is still going to have to pick up some extras down the track, which might give an opportunity to Bebe, but depending on which ones chillcito end up choosing to pick up, they might just be like very much not off the beaten path too much, so it should be fine for them to pick up. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Going towards the sky high heights, and as you can see in the top left of their screens, that's how much flowers they have. They have to input a certain amount to these bots to get through the checkpoints. And so, yeah, theoretically, it's like, oh, you could just like get the minimum amount on the early ones, and then just like get what you need in the areas as you need them. But I think the final one you need like 50 or something like that. There's some of the checkpoints that need like 30 or 40 or 50, so you need like a lot of flowers over the course of the game. And so just getting a lot of the easy ones out of the way early is real nice. And yeah, here comes the second of the vehicle levels. And as you can see, the way in which it's controlled, you walk to the front, it dips down. You walk to the back, it pulls up. Simple, right? It can actually get somewhat finicky because it can jostle around a whole bunch. And the way to get the extra 3 hearts for the mechanic, I guess, of the level, you just need to hit the certain amount of balloons. I think it's like 45 you need to get the 3. Some of the red coins can be a little bit awkward, but the egg throwing, the egg targeting is usually on point from these two, so yeah, that should be fine. After this level, we're definitely going to be able to get into some more interesting and more engaging levels when it comes to kind of the tech, especially the next one, which is the magma run. And I was talking earlier about how it is possible to flutter indefinitely. That will come into effect, or that will come into use in the next level. There is a segment where usually the game wants you to use Poochie to kind of swim across it because it's all crafted stuff, so I think it's like jam or something along those lines. I don't know. But whatever it is, Poochie swims through it and you're supposed to ride on Poochie's back. But that's way too slow, so we just kind of infinite flutter over the gap. It can be a little bit an awkward one because it's a low down. It's like rather low on the screen, and you have to eventually, after you do the gap, you have to climb back up. So you need to have a certain amount of eggs. You need to be able to control the infinite flutter. You also need to end up doing a couple of egg jumps towards the, or egg climbs towards the end. Egg jump is when it's just like directly down and you're using like more vertical. Egg climb is when it's like you use a wall and it's very horizontal in the throwing action. Well, at least that's kind of the terms that I've been using. This is like the one spot where you can potentially lose time in this level from chillcito, just throwing the egg at the real large lad controlling that propeller. But beyond that, rather clean level. Nothing really to speak to it. Not much to say about it. Yeah, I believe they both got all of the flowers necessary. Oh, you only need 40. I keep on thinking it's 45, but every time it's like, every time I go through this level, it's like, oh, I needed 45, and every time it says 40, I'm just like, oh yeah. Oh well. Doesn't really matter. They both got all of it. That's good to see. Ooh. Almost went right back into it. Alright, this is actually one of my favorite levels in terms of the speedrun, just because of... I think some of my more favorite levels are the ones where you can, for the most part, just hold right. And it's just like very timing based to get through it. Yeah. Using those eggs to kind of push that magma monster back just saves you the extra life from taking the damage, or so you won't take the damage from getting hit by it. Yeah, those bigger shy guys, those by swallowing those up, it fully fills up how many eggs you can have. So ideally, you get them over just like the regular ones. You can see chillcito coming into the part that I was mentioning earlier, where you have to do only needing one of the eggs to actually climb back up. So nicely done there. It is very possible to even slightly screw up the flutter jump going through there, and by missing that, you would then even the slightest bit dropping down a fraction, you'd then be needing an extra I believe an extra egg to climb back up. But it seems like both of them are getting through this level quite cleanly. And yeah, Poochie comes along for the ride, ends up picking up essentially a free one. Although it is very possible to end up missing out on it if kind of screw. It is possible to miss out on that one. Thankfully, they both managed to get through that rather cleanly. Still, not too much between them. It's been a pretty good race so far. And there's still quite a way to go. I know the estimate says 2 hours 40, but that's probably going to be closer. They're probably going to be finishing closer to probably like 220 or maybe a bit under that because they've been pushing the time down a fair bit with these little optimizations here and there. They have dropped the time down about 5 or so minutes since it stood for quite a while towards the start of this year. This level is probably one of my least favorite because these birds are just so annoying. And I would end up losing so many free flowers because of it. These two going through it incredibly cleanly for the time being. Even managing to get, because of the cycle of those, the ping pong balls on top of just like air vents. Because of the cycle, they were able to do the timed part, the time challenge real cleanly. If you kind of catch it off cycle, they will be in a really awkward spot to try and pick up. So getting down the right cycle is actually quite important for this, and I believe it's like a global cycle. Yeah, one thing that you end up needing to pick up fairly early when running this game is getting used to trying to balance focusing on fluttering indefinitely and also being able to aim your shots while in midair. And while you are aiming a shot, you can't use the flutter jump again, so you have to be very quick with your aim to re-flutter if that is what you need to be doing in that part of the stage. But yeah, both of them going through that very cleanly. Only missing out on the red coin flower and the second timed one, which yeah, that's kind of the ideal for that level. There's a lot of flowers in there, and that is really nice to pick up. What's this next one? Weighing acorns. Usually there's only like a couple of flowers to pick up in this one. In this next one, don't really want to head back into the background because this one has a lot of background and foreground movement in order to get certain things to progress through the stage, or just flowers is hidden in background locations that can just take too much time. You've already gotten enough flowers from that the Windward Way in the previous stage, so not really needing to get too much more from this one. There's still a couple that you can pick up. Like you see all of this stuff in the background. Oh, actually just going for straight egg climb, and usually, yeah, the path that Bebe is taking for this segment is what I'm a little bit more accustomed to, just kind of taking the slow climb up and then just oh yeah, that's also a second flower that I pick up from that one. Completely forgot about that. Taking the trolley down that path, it's fairly slow, so just kind of climbing down yourself is just a little bit quicker. And again, one of those optimizations that definitely helping out in dropping the time just a little bit more. They do have to come into this background segment because they need to pick up these 3 items to fix a bus stop, I believe it is. And they both able to get actually Baby kind of struggling a little bit because the pieces move around, especially that one up top, so kind of whiffing that shot a little bit, but not too much to worry about. Oh, he's actually going to go back and get more eggs. It does need a few eggs to make this final segment a little bit quicker, but because of that, losing a little bit more time, which is definitely going to help out chillcito in this race. there's this one last flower, and I believe they will be able to get the 100 coin, even though they're only just now like hitting 60, approaching 60. There's a lot of
なるほど、なるほど。
lot of coins in this
最後は
final little
こう
drop towards the end,
で
and using eggs to actually collect the coins rather
これ
than
卵を投げて
jumping to pick them up, because by jumping it will slow down the
を
ooh, 100 on the dot. Slowing down to jump.
そ
Well,
うですね。
jumping slows down that
ここ
trolley progressing down that path, so
もしかしたら
they don't want to do that.
コインの
The eggs
ついてるオブジェクト
definitely do the job.
他のオブジェクトなどにフラワー当ててもいいかもしれませんね。
そうですね。
ああ、そっちの方が高くつくんですかね。
Yep,
あと
and baby
あ
also
の柵の
had a few more to spare, but definitely
上の出っ張り
fine
の
in
部分
getting
あれ
the eggs that
ちょっと
needed
ジャ
out
ン
of
プ
that
しなくて
one.
も
What's the next
乗
level?
れるんですよね。
お、
Jumping to victory?
知らない情報ができた。
Yes. And this stage, we get to use a couple of monkeys.
それでは
Hey, wanna
次の
grab?
ステージ。草間アスレチック
Oh, actually, because chillcito ended up breaking open that pinata earlier, like right at the start, didn't need to use the monkey, and was able to get the flower needed regardless. It's actually not getting a monkey at all. There is one of the flowers that is made somewhat easier by just dropping a monkey onto the flower. We'll see how they end up approaching that one. It should be coming up. Oh, they just use an egg climb to pick that up and also just keep on progressing. Again, makes a lot of sense. Well, there's another one of those things where it's like, it's like, I don't know why we're doing it the other way before. I think Bebe is doing that way with a monkey, where you can spit out with B and also jump at the same time, and the monkey will take that specific path while you just like jump normally. And one of the small optimizations that kind of happened fairly early in the game's life cycle, if you are running and then you press the B button to stick out your tongue to like pick something up, if you are just like running and then just hit the B button, you'll kind of come to a stop as Yoshi just does a little bit of a, it comes to a little bit of a standstill. But if you press B and then while the tongue is coming out, you press the jump button, you will still have
全然
all of that momentum, and you can still use the tongue, get whatever you're wanting, and also keep the your forward momentum going. So that was one of those real early tech things that really helped out
我々に
a lot, because it's used all the time. You'll notice it like pretty much every time that they are on the ground and using their tongue, they're probably going to be jumping at the same time.
そうですね。まあ私走るのに反応しちゃいまし
And
た
now that we're through with those couple of levels, we're into the next boss.
ごめんなさいね、ちょっと
まあ解説も含めて
走っていきましょう。
走りという
入って何か返事してしまいましたからね。
And it is Spike, the piranha. This one can be a little bit finicky, or at least I found it a little bit finicky when it comes to
ボスも
kind of skipping a phase by hitting out one of the vine pillars
やつですね。
using an egg. And you need to be very particular about the amount of eggs that you have and the amount of eggs that you use in this fight, because every single one really matters. Because if you miss out, if you miss a shot or something, that ends up losing about half a minute, because you then have to wait for a bunch of extra things to come spawning in, and then you will end up getting another egg, and then you can have another shot at hitting Spike.
これあと2回繰り返します。
So ideally, they land their shots, I guess. So yeah, these
ちなみに
pillars,
ね
you just gotta hit one.
細いパックンフラワー、パックンが、攻撃してくるのですが、片方を倒しておくことによって、片方分の、攻撃待機時間
This fight is going rather nicely for both of them.
ことができます。
待機時間
待機時間3。
待機時間
それでは、待機時間について今回の RTA イベントでは、待機時間ではなく無敵時間様のご協賛をいただいております。以下略。
以下略。
I believe the game category has been updated now. Finally hit. We've been playing Silent Hill for the past 50 minutes, but I think we're finally back into the world of Yoshi.
やばいな、台本にないことしか喋ってないな。
Alright, sounds good.
本番特有の。
And there is that third gem? Second gem.
ヨシアイランドと
Second gem.
ああ、そうですね。
I swear I played this game before.
パックンといえば畜生なんですけどね、ヨッシーとパックンといえば。
Yeah.
ちなみに
And now, both of them will be coming to this bottom path. The path that's usually taken is go the top route, go the bottom route, and then just go through the middle. Some runs I think ages ago were doing bottom path and top path. The middle path, it doesn't really matter too much. I don't think so. Just as long as you take the middle one last, because that's where the exit is for this entire kind of joint section. You want to be finishing in the middle.
なるほど。
なるほどなのか。なるほどだったのか。
しまった。口が滑ってしまった。チャット復活したようですね。
おお、よかった。
多分コメントを見る限り復活したっぽそうですね。
みんな見えてる？みんな
見えてますね。
見えてますか？
ちょっと私のやらかしによって警察がRTA ちゃんの警察が何人か来ちゃいました。すいません。
Yeah, this stage has quite a few instances of egg jumping, egg climbing, infinite fluttering, just to kind of get through some of these segments quicker than you'd otherwise do if you're doing it normally. There's a point at towards the very end of this level where they will, I think, use about 4 or 5 eggs in a single egg jump to get real high to try and get an egg that is pretty high up there. And it's always pretty fun to do those real those egg jumps that utilize a lot of eggs, and I think we'll see it from chillcito here on the right in a little bit. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of eggs. And using a whole bunch of eggs is what we'll see later on when it comes to an elevator skip that I believe I mentioned earlier. They need to use a lot of eggs, and they need to pick up a few eggs along the way as well. So it's one of those one of the tricks of the speedrun that if you can get right, it definitely saves a lot of time, but can be a little bit of a hassle.
そうですね。つむじくんもさっそうと現れてさっそうと画面から出てきてますから。右から左へもスーッと。
You can see that chillcito is starting to push his leader out a little bit. They still need to pick up those few extra flowers that Bebe ended up picking up earlier on in the run. Because as it stands, I do think that Bebe has 2 extra. See how it goes. Just a little bit of a damage boost at the start of this level. There aren't too many instances where damage boosting is all that useful. I mentioned at the start of the game that this game does, at the start of the run, that this game does have costumes that you can get in this game, and that they work as armor. Those costumes will prevent you from taking damage, even if you did do a damage boost. But as I mentioned at that same time, it does take a while to get those costumes. It takes about a minute of going into the whole thing, and it's a whole ordeal to actually get them. So ideally it's just,
とても可愛らしいですね。
just don't get hit.
とても可愛らしい
Unless you absolutely need to. Oh,
スルーします。ここで、ゼリー下に抜けたら、ポチとはお別れですね。奥の方にあるお菓子に連れてポチは行ってしまいました。
there was a timer, a timed flower that chillcito just passed. Sometimes I think quite a few runs will end up doing that one, as we can. Yeah, it is going to be picked up by Bebe, but at the time, chillcito only had a single flower. So if they had used that single flower to start it up, they would not have had a flower to actually complete it. So just not bothering with it, and that'll be another one where they'll have to pick up later on throughout the route. So theoretically, at the end of this,
あ、はいはい。
Bebe is going to be 3 flowers up. So even though it seems like chillcito is ahead, well, they're going to have to make a little bit of a pit stop at some point
話すネタが温存できるの
to
で
pick up those extra flowers and see how that kind of changes things.
あ、なんか女の子動いてないぞ。
And yeah, Pidgey just kind of barrels through all those stacks of enemies. That's kind of how it's intended to be done. This level.
危ない危ない。
取り損ねるとこだった。
Yeah, a lot of the time you just don't really use Poochie. The only times you use Poochie is when they're going to be helping you to get a flower or to get across like those really annoying
このステージは
segments.
ロープにぶら下がるのと、ブラブラさんというなんかブラーンとしている、糸に吊るされた、敵が、特徴的なステージとなっております。
What is this next segment again? This level is called literally Yoshi pulls some strings. It's rather straightforward.
卵のジャンプ
And it also has a lot of real fun egg climbing or egg jumping that you can do in this level. You can see chillcito doing that.
そして、ここでも
And you can skip a whole lot of the content in this level just by bouncing on some eggs.
多分上に
It's
登る
pretty simple.
上に登るのが
Once you get used to
多いんですかね。
egg jumping, there's a lot that you can do with it. And it is a lot of fun to do.
あー、なんか、あれよいしょ。卵が足りない。
あ
卵が足りない。
いつも使っ
やって
いい
る。
Interesting.
の時で使ってた。
うん。
Huh. If chillcito had actually picked up a whole bunch of the eggs earlier, there's a couple of ways in which you can skip a lot of that segment right there, but it seems like they didn't end up picking up eggs for some reason or another, and then were kind of forced to
今やってる
play it a little bit
ショートカット、チルスットさんは
safer, as we can see.
こ
Ooh,
れはちょっと
ミスっちゃった。
距離近すぎちゃいますね。
maybe I almost got it to work.
近すぎると、
But now they're going to have to do that flood all the way back. If they're able to get that that trick to work out for them, they would have definitely been able to gain up a little bit of time. But unfortunately, it only ended up like somewhat
行きましたね。
net neutral.
そうですね。すり抜け自体は。すり抜け自体はうまくいったんだけど、その後の処理
Both of
を
them
しておる。
stumbling a little bit in this level, but I guess as long as they're both doing it together, it's
最後は、
not really
ブラーとぶら下がって
changing
ゴール
how far apart they are for the most part.
ここ結構、まあ、メルツロスはしてしまいましたが、ここ結構被弾しやすいんですよね。その被弾はしていないですかね。
ああ、ですね。被弾自体はなくて。
They both did the exact same thing on that final spring, where they just bonk their head on that little lip of the roof.
今のところ僕フラワーの
But yeah, not too many flowers picked up out of that
お
one,
ー、それは
but
素晴らしい。
yeah, with how much of the content you kind of just skip through, yeah, not much room for getting flowers in that level. Yeah, I believe we're on to the circus. That very much looks like a
ぶら
circus.
下がってはセーフなんですよね。 ぶらっとぶら下がって。
The Castle Carnival, that's what it's
許
called.
されますか？
This next one is one of those,
許されている。
another one of those levels which, well, personally, I had a lot of fun with because it is one of those ones where you need to have kind of all of that tech
よかった。
kind of honed a little bit because
まだ許され
you
ますね
need to have your
許されない時
infinite flutter jumps going well. You need to have your mid-air targeting going well. If you kind of miss that,
それじゃあ次
you're missing out on a flower.
それは失礼
And also egg climbing and egg jumping, which
こちら
we see a little bit more later on in this level. And also just like timing in general. If you let those two, I'm not sure what they are, penguins things, little penguin things.
使って登っていきます
I really don't know what they are. But if you let them kind of rotate a little bit too far, you won't be able to get the
木に登っていきますスイスイスイスイ
get the flower from it. And there's another. I did mention an elevator skip. That's not the elevator I was referring to, but that is technically an elevator skip. And it's much easier to skip an elevator going down
その動力で登っていくん
like
ですけど
like this than it is trying to skip an elevator by going
登
up.
場することによってもう一気にスイスイっと
The other elevator that I was referring to, you skip an elevator going up, and you have to go up an awful lot.
このステージはキューちゃん可愛いですよね、キューちゃん。
ああそうですね可愛らしいですねキュウちゃんこのステージのみでしたっけもしかして
ああ、
いや、
かもしれ
まだ
ないです。
後で出てくる。
あ
パカパカブロックで出てこなかったでしたっけ？あれ違うか。
ああもしかしたらいたかもしれませんね
ってかな。
いや、いなかった。
あ
情報が錯綜している。
RTA では登場しないとだけは言っておきます
そうですね。
They're not really having too much of trouble with this level at all.
番が
This next one, for chillcito though, the haunted house,
印象に残りづらい。
or the haunted mansion, I guess I should say. There's a lot of flowers that you can get in this one. You don't get all of them because some of them require a little bit of backtracking.
そうですね。
And the like. Even this first one that they do get, technically a little bit of backtracking, but you're not really going too far out of the way for it.
結構冗談抜きで怖いステージなんで
そうですね。
Yeah, this is kind of the first
一生
level
懸命プレイの時
in the game that, like, there's a weird
急に雰囲気
kind of there's a weird couple of levels in this game which kind of just very much approach horror. I was like, when I was first playing through, I was like, Jesus, like, how is this a kid's game?
ステージですね
It gets a little bit wild. I will say that much. And these things that are patrolling,
ですね
these little ghosts, they will snap you up and they will send you back to the start of the room.
この敵は接触する
In this segment here, for chillcito, they have to pick themselves up a key in order to get through
ここうまく卵ジャンプ
the door at the end.
ガブガブさんを誘導することによってスムーズに鍵を解
And
除
it's actually not going to get the
あと卵ジャンプを使いますね
timed flower that is in that room. We'll see if Bebe goes for it because at that point it would be what 4 flowers ahead.
そしてここの椅子ですねすり抜けですね
できる。
Nicely done there from chillcito. Just using
上抜けですね。
a lot of the egg, just a whole bunch of egg
勢いをつけていくことによって
jumping to not only just get high up towards the roof, but also using those eggs to knock down the stairs. You need to use an egg to knock down those stairs, but it kind of did it all simultaneously, so I was able to
そして最後
get
は
through
後ろ
that
からなんか
real neatly.
わかんないよくわかんない何かに追いかけられて
怖いですね。
これなんか下手したら一回なんか被弾したりするんですよね
And Bebe gets it as well. Nicely done. There was a point where I, in trying to get up that segment, because you need to actually get up there in order to get here to grab a key to unlock the door.
強いですね
I found that if you went high enough and the ceiling was kind of spawned in, you could essentially do an egg climb by throwing directly up and having it bounce off the roof and coming down to you and still hitting you.
え
It was hard to get consistent, but it was something that was kind of fun. Their method of just egg climbing off the edge of the couch, or egg jumping off the edge of the couch, was much, much better.
チャレンジのステージなので
Um,
得点形式ですね
time for another auto scroller. Kind of, well, not an auto scroller, but it's a time thing. You can't gain time on this one. You can definitely lose time on it. And they will not be getting the red coins. And this is one I was referring to earlier, where the red coins in this one aren't in the most convenient of places. And also, throughout the course of this, there's only a single one of these rings that they can afford to miss. Because of the way the point scoring system works, they can only afford to miss one, and there's one in particular that they will not get, and it is the one that chillcito just passed there. He may not have managed to pick it up, but it was like real up high, and just not in a fun position to try and get to. So they just don't bother with that one. Believe they're all good on points. Yeah, it's 15,000 to get the 3 flowers at the end of the level. So that is just taking care of that one very, very neatly, and they will move on to, I think it's the Chili Hot Isles. That also has a bit of an auto scroller section to it.
オッケー、決まった。よ
おー、決まってる。
しよしよし。
ここの、トランポリンのような芝を
But I think
ところの、
yeah.
輪くぐり結構、
Maybe it gets through that just fine as well.
あとフラワー回収も滞りなく進んでいる感じですね。
そうですね。
So Bebe heading into that checkpoint had 47.
ベベンさんも大
I'll have to have a look at how many Bebe has, because I know that they picked up a few extra over the course so far. And I'll have to keep track on when chillcito ends up picking up a flower where Bebe does not. Was that 47? It's just 2 ahead for the time being. Huh. Bebe must have skipped a couple, or at least one that I may not have been paying attention for. But this next level is there's quite a few fairly straightforward backup flowers that you can get in this. I think that may have been that one that chillcito picked up at the very start there. May have been a backup for them. It is rather straightforward to get. One of the strats to try and get that first flower was to just get an egg, and similarly to what we saw earlier in Pushy's tape trial, where you had to scroll the camera up high enough, like what Bebe just did exactly what I was going to start talking about, where you scroll the camera up just enough so that the flower kind of spawns in, and then just throw an egg directly upwards towards it. So it's nice when I go to start talking about something and then one of the runners just kind of illustrates my point. So really nicely done there. There, in this little segment here, there's a couple of extra flowers that chillcito may want to pick up. Yeah, ends up picking up this one underneath. And there's 2 kind of players when it comes to this specific auto scroller. There's the player like chillcito who is probably a little bit more chill, funnily enough, and only hits the button when they need to. And then there's the player like Bebe, which I'm also very much like, where you just spend the entire time just endlessly ground pounding on the shoot button. And here is just, yeah, it's just another one of those segments where I have to pick up a whole bunch of items to rebuild a structure of some sort, and it's going to be another gunship. And I think both of them have essentially gotten the same amount of flowers. Maybe that one in that tunnel area. I think that might be one of those recent flowers, or one of the flowers that made its way into the regular routing more recently.
それを撃ち落としていきますね。これを放置してると、
You can see the difference between the two.
そうされる前にやられる前にやるって感じですね。あとここ
And yes, you can just do real quick ground pounds on top of those buttons.
もうなんか解説する前に沈みましたね。
楽し
先手
い。
必勝。
連射楽しい。
楽しい。
And that's that level done for chillcito, who is maintaining a pretty good lead. Slipslide Isle, which is the next level, can that is one of the levels that has, like, I think some of the most optimization, some of the most intricate optimizations.
順調
There's some real
順調に進んでいますね。
いい感じです。
real tough movement that can happen in this
それでは次のステージ
level,
する
which
風景
if it goes right the first time, it looks real neat.
唯一
And if it doesn't work out well, it's probably only a couple of seconds
このステ
here
ー
or
ジは
there.
タークンが登場します
The try to fix,
ペンギンのタークン
I believe so.
このタークンペンギンなのですが、
Honestly, I wasn't aware that it
あらら
was not working. Question mark.
あら、止まっちゃっ
大丈夫ですかね
Yeah, here's like actual
回
penguins.
線トラブルでちょっと
One
スワープから
thing that we may see from
少
chillcito
し
is if
ト
you
ラブルが発生しちゃったかもしれません。
if you spit it out,
まあ解説
nah, I'm not going to do
まあ
it.
一瞬私
There's one of the strats from a while ago was to spit out the penguin at the same time as you were jumping, so you would spit it out and immediately jump off the top of the penguin. But just using an egg jump there is fun, as they can use it now to just give themselves a little bit more room, a little bit more kind of distance.
私というかまあ踏ん張りで
Yeah, this is another one of those segments where
ここボールを使って
infinite
infinite
fluttering, air fluttering
思うんですが
definitely comes in handy, because doing it the normal way takes an awful long time, because you have to roll on this ball and you have to it takes a while.
た。
They tried to do the
この
penguin
ター
jump,
クを使えば軽く
unable
つららまった時
to
間をカットできるんです
get it to work right there.
ベベンさんも今挑戦されてますね。ここの青コインは、
But all in all, still a fairly clean stage there from chillcito.
回収することができます。
Able to get all the ones that they need out of it. And then maintaining a good lead. And it's really needing either chillcito to mess up on some flowers or mess up in the they're trying to get that penguin jump, just unable to get that either. It is a really weirdly specific timing. So it's not too
ボス戦ですか？
surprising that neither were able to get it, because it is rather difficult, but
あ、何が出る
it would have been nice to be able to see it. But anyway, just juggling the penguin.
あ、よし。
Anyway, we're coming into the next of the boss
まあまあ
fights.
実際ボス戦が来るまで、 どんなボスが出てくるかね。
Bird, isn't it? I think it's bird.
まだわからない。
And it's a beach ball.
入る前に分かっちゃうなんてことはありませんからね。
ないですね。一体何が待ち構えているんだ。
And I'll just let the fight speak for itself. There are optimizations in terms of how many,
シルエットは
because in this one you're not really using eggs to kind of do the mechanics. You're just having to take those penguins that we saw in the previous level and just spitting them at Bert. So he kind of falls off, and you just have to slam him a few
という
times.
わけで、
We'll see
ボス
how
戦の、
this one goes.
丼ですね。最初は丼が左に移動して笛を鳴らしてタークンを呼びます。そのタークンを食べて、丼に、2回当てます。そしたら丼が点灯するので、そこにヒップドロップを食らわせます。この際、タークンは、
Yeah, and I have to do these phases where
てますね。
it's a lot of beach balls. And because they were able to hold on to one of the penguins from the previous phase, they're going to be able to use it in this next phase. Because they need to use at least a few to get them off the edge and then end up getting the ground pound. Again, it's just another... you just gotta hit the boss 3 times. You know, the standard thing.
さすがにそんなことはないと思います
Oh,
けど
wow. Oh, that's an interesting strat. I hadn't seen that one before. From chillcito just going off towards the edge.
なんか見ました
A real interesting way to do it. And it actually makes a lot of sense and cleans up a lot of time in that boss fight, which otherwise was pretty damn optimized. But yeah, taking them off that left side definitely saved a bit of time from a lot of the previous routes. A lot of the previous strategies for that fight.
もうすぐですね。ついでにちゃんと解説しておこうかな。どんぶりがヒップドロップするので、ここで、あれまあ。
Ooh.
大丈夫だ大丈夫です
Oh, maybe dropped a little bit low, so I had to kind of wait just an extra second. But they're fine. They should be.
解説できね
Didn't really lose much time at
え。
all.
解説できねえ。まあ、とりあえず、どんぶりが、
This next
になっている
segment.
ので、それでタッグを当てて、
Ninja Armor, I believe it's called.
点灯させることが
It's very much a
ですね。はい。はい。
traditional Japanese castles themed throughout this entire world. So
当時からもう
See how this one plays out.
恥ずかしさで殺すっていう衝撃的な
there is an auto scroller in the second level here, so
ではなぜ最
Joy
初のスパダのヨッシーは平気なんですか
um,
あの後ろになんかつけてるんであれ
Yeah,
は
but that
裸じゃない
happens.
ですね
なるほど。
あの背中に
ooh.
裸とは言えないですね
ああやった
Oh, Chillcito kind of fumbling a little bit trying to get up on top of that roof. And has to kind of get some health elsewhere because they're going to need that health to come back. If they want to get the flower for
してください
では次のステージ、仕掛けがいっぱい忍者屋敷ですね。
ooh, having a little bit of a trouble with this stage so far, Chillcito. Giving a little bit of an opportunity for Bebe to make it back. We'll see how they go through it. Ooh,
おっと、容姿は台本が半分。
interesting. Threw all the way off to the left there, but that should be fine.
どんぶりインパクトザリア
So far, things are going since a bit of a shaky start there from Chillcito. Everything is kind of right at the ship, and it's picking up one of the a bit of an extra flower there behind one of those gates, because they are needing to pick up a few extra than what Bebe has been able to pick up over the course of this, but able to get through there. Eventually, it was a little bit rough
まあまあまあ。
towards the start, but able to get through there eventually.
ちょっと解説が遅れてしま
All
った
right,
の
and
で。
also Bebe also going for that flower.
え
I guess if you're able to go over the top of
こ
that
この部分、
gate, you should be fine to pick it up without losing too much time. But also in that segment towards the end of that level, you saw there was that kind of an elevator shaft. Doing the whole mechanics, it's a big old deal where you have to kind of go around and do all these various things. It's easier just to climb using eggs. About to do an all flowers run. Those are there's a lot to go into those ones.
スキップをしています。
Good luck in regards to that.
感じですね。なんか勢いに任せて俺とか言って
There's a lot. Oh, yes, you all recognize the name from the speedrun Discord. Which also, if anyone is interested in picking up this game, there is the Yoshi's Crafted World speedrun Discord. You can find it on speedrunners.com. Should be a link towards it there. We're definitely
さすがにまずい
free to help out in terms of resources or just chat about the game in general.
楽しみにしておく
It's definitely a fun game. I did not ever intend on doing any of the longer categories because they can definitely take a while. The main ones are like the 80%, or I think it's all front sides because, as mentioned before, there are backside to all of these levels, but all flowers involves doing all of those, and that is a lot.
はい、それではこのステージ
That is a lot of levels to do,
それでは紹介
and
されているルートを進んで
it's going to take quite a while to do those runs. Two and a half hours is usually a good time for a lot of the runs that I like to do. Well, I say that one of the games I've run a hell of a lot in the past was Pokemon Shield, and that was like a 4 hour plus run. So I guess the length is not too much of an issue. It's just there's a lot of like really annoying levels in this game. Luckily, in the 80%, you can kind of ignore some of the levels, and a lot of the flowers in some of those levels. Yeah, this is, as mentioned, one of those auto scrollers. Ideally, they get all the flowers out of this.
はい、逆走できなくなってい
If
ます。
they end up missing a flower in this, something is going wrong, I'll say that
そう
much.
ですね、
But I believe that will be
ステー
just
ジクリア
fine.
すると、なんか黄色いカーペットのようなものが
あ
ビヨーンって伸びるじゃないですか。あれが、巻かれてるのが
あ、伸びてこないんだ。
伸びないんですよね。
あ、なるほど。
ちなみに、マウンテンランドとか、忍者ランド、マウンテンランドから忍者ランドに行けたりもしますけど、忍者ランドからマウンテンランドには行けない。
And the one thing about doing 100% on this level is that that box that chillcito just hit, it's hidden behind some of the
そういう分岐があるんだよということ。
まあルート
just some of the levels, so it's very easy to kind of miss that one on your first playthrough.
対策がしっかりされている。
But it seems that, yeah,
ステージスキップとか存在しない。
it's really hard to say anything when it comes to these auto scrolls because there's really not a hell of a lot to do with them.
存在しないですね。
The game gives you ample amount of time to do everything that you need to in these auto scrollers.
ことが実はいろいろたくさんあるヨッシークラスワールドです。自分がたまたま見つけた小さな発見がもしかしたらある程度活用されるかもしれません。まったり遊び以外にもゲームの楽しみ方はあります。ヨッシークラスワールドをお持ちの方がいましたら、ぜひ、この機会にある程度に挑戦されてみてはいかがでしょうか。もしお持ちでない方は、このゲームとても癒されるので、ぜひ購入されてみてください。よければ RTA もどうぞ。
One thing that it's possible to do at the end of this level, it's not necessary because it doesn't really say too much at all, but you can just like
発売されてからね、
do an infinite hover at the top of the screen. And what that allows you to do is just like jump over this
確か3月末でしたもんね、2019年。
big construction thing that this shy guy put together, but it's not much in terms of time lost or gained.
じゃあもう
But at
そう
least
ですよね。
doing infinite flutter keeps
そうですね。
keeps the hands busy while an auto scroller just goes towards its conclusion.
この兵法も可愛いですね。
あ、そうですね。ここの兵法可愛らしいですね。
1匹だけでこんな脅かしに来る。
頑張ってハリボテ作って脅かしに来るのは可愛らしいですね。
This level does have a mini boss at the end of it, which
上通って製造してますね
does have some egg climbing to
上を
kind of speed up the process of that mini boss. We'll get to that eventually. There's
コ
still
メント見て気づいた
quite a bit of level to go
私ちゃんと
through,
あの
going through this
歩いてる私
castle,
本人がちゃんと記録してないというね。
確かに。
and trying to just get through as quickly as possible.
紹介してるのがおかしいです。おかしいです。
Going through these
まあ
these
それ
large
紹介で
square rooms with these
購入されてみてください。
kind of elevator pods almost. Not sure how
そ
to
の自分
describe.
もこの RTA なんか
But yeah,
10分以上
those rooms need quite a bit of
いうのを
well,
コメント見てはえーっつって
optimizing those were pretty important because they can take a while if you try and do them normally.
宿につながります。
Oh, oh.
そうですね。
やばい。よいしょ。うん。
Interesting way to get through that one. Got through it eventually there from chillcito,
上
but
の方に させていただきます。このステージ、お殿さんの
There's quite a few instances in this level where you're able to just like refill on eggs, so
こちら、あとはこの
never an issue
部屋ですかね。
when it comes to amount of eggs. Only towards like the very end, because there's another one of those rotating rooms
このステ
where
ージ、多分 BGM で察されてる、
you
察している方は察している
kind
と
of
思うん
need
で
a
すが、
certain amount of eggs to get through, and if you don't, you're kind of waiting a while.
BGM で察することができるんですか？
ボス戦
Yeah, this is one of those where you can't just use all the fancy speed tech to just speed your way through. You kind of have to just do it normally, which,
あんまり気づいて
well. I'm trying to hover above all of these kind of samurais, just to also get past them, and also to make it so getting that timed flower was much easier. This can be a little bit of a finicky jump to try and get out of this little segment, but of course, able to get through that just fine.
それじゃあ、これでボス戦突入ですね。
Yeah, here comes that mini boss I was talking about. It is just one of those puzzle rooms just made bigger, and every time you just have to traverse the puzzle room and then just ground pound on the Shogun at the end.
壁が突っ込んできますね。ただまあ RTA なので
This,
スムーズに進むよって
this
そんな攻
one
撃来る前に
you do a little bit. I think you do an egg jump. There's no point in taking the
するんですけどね。
taking the spring. This last one is like the third phase is definitely I think the quickest because you don't have to do much of anything,
ショートカットしています。これによりスムーズに
which is kind of funny. It's like this whole puzzle getting more complicated, and it's actually the third phase which is the fastest because of just
ジャンプ使わなければ。
just
なんすかねこれ。
the way in which you just
こう
avoid
ですね。
doing stuff in this game by climbing up walls with eggs. What's up next? It's the Rumble Jungle? Yeah.
それでは次のステージジャングルランドですね。
I think the distance between the two races at the, for the time being is kind of stabilized. There are a few segments later on which are definitely going to test
そういえ
that.
ばお殿さんも倒したら裸になるのでケースが
We'll see how.
あ、
Well, not necessarily this world. Actually, the second one, Hopping High, can definitely have some moments where you miss one egg jump,
様なので、
and all of a sudden you're just kind of in struggle street and having to kind of backtrack to get more eggs,
良いでは
and having to fend away this annoying snake
お
that's
前がやる
kind of chasing you throughout it. So that's definitely one where things can get a little bit dicey, but I don't expect it too much. Ooh, interesting. Able to just use the tongue immediately after egg jumping above
しました。
chillcito to actually kind of just grab the egg out of the air after it was used. It's like, well, I'm still in need of this particular egg, so
このステージ、サイのような
yeah, they're going to be able to hold on to a lot of the eggs.
サイですね。サイがね、
そこに
後ろからね。
はい。
まあ、まあ、ベベンさんの画面見ていただけるとわかるのですが、サイをバルーンで割ってもらうことによって、まあ、スムーズに移動するというのが、いかにできるかが重要ですね。
Yeah, a lot of this level is kind of just running away from a rhino.
追跡をされてますね。
Ooh. Yeah, at that point, ideally use like a couple of eggs to just bust through some of those boxes so you don't have to worry about
突破できますね
waiting for the rhino to bust through them. But yeah, a little bit iffy.
当ててもダメージ受けないんですよね。
そうなんですよね。
そうですね、最強ですね。
最強ですね。
サイだけに最強。
And this is another bridge we need to build. You have to get a whole bunch of bridge parts.
離れ離れになっていますね。
うん。
かわいそうに。
ここは橋をかけてあげないといけない。
And again, as mentioned before, if you only have the parts of a thing that you need to build, you can end up just like throwing them as you would eggs, which means you can kind of build
あ、よかったよかった。
wherever, when the game would ideally want you to be standing in front of it before it's like, all right, now you can start building this. It's like, no, 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 I'm just going to throw it from anywhere. You're just going to put them in place for me.
これをすることにより、最後まで差異なく走り切ることができるわけですね。はい。
解説助かる。
Yeah, both of them going through this level fairly cleanly. Still got to see Bebe go through the last little segment, but I doubt they'll have too much of an issue with it. Yeah, anyone who is only just now tuning in, welcome to the English restream of RTA in Japan. I am JL Phoenix, and this is Yoshi's Crafted World. This is a race, an 80% race between chillcito and Bebe, who are number 1 and 2 on the 80% ladder. And they have been trading the world record back between them two, between the two of them, like half a dozen times over the past month. So they are definitely contesting it quite a bit. And yeah, this level hopping high can. These frogs can be something, and also this next segment can also be a little bit annoying because this this snake will come along and just be a nuisance the entire way through.
実際このヘビに足は壊してもらって、壁など壊してもらって先へ進むのですが、
yeah, Chillcito had to. Ideally, they'd throw an egg to get that flower that they picked up, but because they only had a single one left. Ooh. The amount of eggs that they have is incredibly important for this segment because they need enough to bust through a lot of these boxes, and if they don't have enough, they're kind of trapped and waiting for that snake to come and open the path for them, which that just takes way too long. It is not a very speedy snake, unfortunately.
結構上に登るの難しいですよね、ここ。
なんですね。卵の数が結構シビアで、卵なくなると壁が壊せなくなって困っちゃうみたいなことが結構あるんで。
そうですね。
Despite that little bit of a delay there from Chillcito in that climb, I think it was pretty clean for both of them. What is next? Oh, it's a jungle tour. This is literally a shooting gallery. An auto-scroller shooting gallery, so very unlikely that either will be able to gain time on the other. You just sit on this train, get fed eggs indefinitely, and you just fire away. As mentioned before, with a lot of these auto-scrollers, ideally they pick up every single one of the flowers, including the extras, as in health, coins, and red coins, because they are all on offer. There's no like detouring to get some of them. They are all laid out in front of you. It is possible to not so much skip, but end up accidentally missing a few of them and still be okay when it comes to the score for this. It's a rather generous total.
しかも4人によって虹のやつ逃しちゃってましたよね。
300点が逃してしまったんで。大丈夫か
とりあえず、ここのコツとしては、先ほど逃してしまいましたが、虹色の300ポイントの動物をなるべく逃がさないようにすることですね。結構動物を逃しやすいので、全て当てようとするとかえって損する場合があります。 あとたまに当てさせる気のないような的も存在するので、そういう意味でも狙える的を確実に当てていくという方針の方が結構やりやすいかもしれません。
There's really not too much to say about this level. It's rather self-explanatory, I do believe. You just
多分1万点ぐらいはいくと
keep on firing eggs at things. You keep on getting points.
わかんないですけど。
検証できる程度には実は頑張りまして、
え、
9850点まで行ったことあるんですけど、そうので
なるほどなるほど。
1万点また私ちょっと
それすごいな。9000後半って。だから本当にこれ、この一瞬しか出てこないターゲットなどもありますからね。パーフェクトは本当、ほぼほぼ無理と言っても。
もうぜひ皆様のご報告お待ちしてます。1万点取ったよ。
It definitely seems like
Pepe
Pepe is a little bit more comfortable going through this. Chillcito missing some of the higher totals, but they should be fine at the end. It is somewhat difficult to miss out on the maximum score, especially with how many of the high total targets in this last little segment.
ぐるっと一周していますね。ここ一見取り逃したように見えた部分も、ぐるっともう一回回ることによって、もう一度当てられるチャンスがあるので、結構後半まで諦めずに狙っていくのが大切です。ポイントの方は、お二人とも大丈夫そうですね。
I think, well, actually, this might be another situation where I keep on thinking whenever I've done runs of this, I was like, I need to hit this certain point, and it turns out I was like vastly overestimating how much I needed.
ちょっと喉が渇いてきましたので、
はい、
飲み物の方、こちら、翼を授けるレッドブルというものを。
Yeah, it's only 8,000 that they need, not the 9,000. So even though Chillcito ended up missing some of the higher total targets, it's fine. This next boss, though, is probably one of my favorite in terms of designs. It is an alligator train. It's real neat. Right, so Chillcito going through that checkpoint ended up at 20 flowers. How much does Bebe have? We'll have 21. There's only one more that Chill needs to kind of make back in his last bunch of segments. Because after this boss fight, there is the Outer Orbit, which has 3 levels. Cherry Valley, which has 3 levels. Then there's Shadowville, which has 3 levels. And then there's the final boss. A bunch of those can be very quick, even though that does seem like a lot to go through. It's actually not all that many. Yeah, here is the alligator train. I just love the design of it. And a lot of the interesting. A lot of the optimization is just about how can we speed up any of these phases. And it's like just making it as easy as possible for you to get the shots off onto. You need to be able to hit the mouth once it's opened up.
あとここですね。警報機ですね。警報機。
And if they end up missing that little bit of a timing, it just takes a little bit longer and they have to kind of wait out a little bit. And one thing we see there from Chillcito, trying to take the back carriage out last. The reason to do that is I believe that spawns in the the extra carriages out just that little bit
うまく誘導
quicker.
して、なるべく早めに壊してもらうようにしてみます。あとここですね、あえて被弾することによって、その無
Yeah, not too worried about health total for that one. There isn't an extra flower for having full health there, but by going all the way to the right, it limits how far the train will go before starting to attack you. So just those little tiny optimizations.
やべやべやべやべやべ
あ
やべ
あららららら
あーと食べられる
Oh no. Maybe I ended up missing the shot. And then one thing that the gator will do, it will kind of do a bunch of fake outs.
マジか
And that definitely definitely got him. And there we go.
いろいろ
Lost a little bit of
執
time.
行待機してるとアンチなので、それを活用するのもいいかもしれないです。
And chillcito going through those boss fights
それでは
incredibly
デ
cleanly.
スートさんが入られた、ステージ、スペースランドの、ロケット発射カウントダウンですね。このステージ、今回の RTA の、最大の見せ場といっても過言ではないと思います。ぜひご注目していってください。
I did mention earlier that one of the levels has a very big elevator skip. This is that level. We'll get to see it towards the end, and hopefully both of them can
おうまく決まり
can
ました
pull it off.
こち
But
ら
if only one of them
と
can make it, it's gonna definitely skew how this race is gonna go. I mean, if only Bebe gets it, then it'll probably even things up incredibly. But we'll see how it goes. They need to have essentially a full stack of eggs. There aren't too many flowers picked up in this level because of just the positioning of them. They're all in like rather awkward
あと
positions.
先ほど、ショートカットの際に被弾してしまっているというか、被弾は免れないので、回復ハード
Yeah,
してま
if
すね。
they're able to get this elevator skip, great. It will save them a whole bunch
ここから
of
見せ場
time.
見せ場ですね。 これ弾を
As they go
打
up,
って
they go
あ
up.
と壁に
they
弾
go
を
up.
当てて、その反射を利用
They
して
keep on going up.
しています。
There we go. Gets it.
ここで
Nicely done.
テレ
And
ビ
also,
画面
if they do end up
としていますね。
messing it up, they don't get a second try at it because the camera has already moved beyond. Like the door essentially closes on the elevator,
解説というか、
so they can only really give it one attempt.
どっちかっていうと僕が切りました
いえいえい
失礼
え。
まあまあ見せ場が決まってよかったです
そうですね、綺麗に決まってましたね。
Now we'll have to see if maybe he's going to be able to get the elevator skip as well. It is not the easiest of tricks, I'll say that much, because you need to actually use quite a few eggs just on the jump itself, and then you have to have enough to complete the climb.
ふわふわする場所なので、まあ、ふわふわっと移動します。
What? Having to pick up an extra couple there?
雑になって
They should be fine now.
ふわふわっとね
あそこ
There we go. Both of them able to get the
今宇宙ステージ入ります
elevator skip
本当にあそこだけ
without too much of an issue, so it's great to see.
あ、ちょっとだけ失礼します。ちょっとファザーマンが来たので、
はーい
This next level to the stars, there's a lot of cycle-based stuff, and it actually even missing out on that flower there, on that kind of rotating thing in the background there. Again, I keep on saying it, but that's gonna be another flower that they're gonna have to pick up elsewhere.
もうちょっとうまくやれれば
That
流れ星に乗って
Bebe has been picking up just a couple more here and there that they haven't had to worry about
してますねあ解
once
説ありがとう
in these later stages, but Chillcito having to pick up those extra few, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be too much of an issue. They are
ここは本当に流れ
fairly handily in the lead for the time being,
動く足場がいっぱい
and there's quite a few flowers later on that
やっております
are fairly straightforward to pick up.
よいしょと失礼しました。
いい。
But there's still probably 30 minutes at most left in this.
だいぶ進んじゃってますね。いや、本当に失礼しました。
流れ星いっぱい流れてるよっていうことしか。
そうですね。これに乗ってますよっていう話を、
なるほど。
した話をしてますよ。
Usually in this level, they would go for the coin flower. Not picking up the what's it called? Ooh, yeah, they're not going to be able to get that. If they just had either a few more eggs or managed to pick up a few extra coins elsewhere, they would have been able to pick up that flower. But again, that's another flower they're not going to they have to pick up elsewhere. So only 4 from that one. I think maybe might be able to get maybe 5 or 6 flowers. We'll see.
僕が思ってるだけかもしれない。
Yeah, hitting that present in the background, that is a lot of coins,
フラワー2個取り逃したんですけど、
which
フラワー2個
Chillcito didn't end up picking up, so that definitely would have been more than enough to get a flower at the end, but unfortunately, again, they are going to have to pick up something
そ
elsewhere.
れでは次のステージですね。
This level, what's it called again?
じゃあ細胞というロボット
Space
の
Hub?
キャラクター
Hubbub?
途中で降ってきた
There's a decent amount of
ですね。細胞は基本的に
just cycles that you need to be
道を
wary
く
of.
れたり足場を動かしたり
Jumping on that little robot there stops it in place, and just
隕石が落ちるとパニックモード
this whole level just works on cycles of kind of peace and then chaos.
やはり
When it's at peace, these robots are actually very helpful. That flower in the background, not very quick. It takes quite a while to actually get that. So there's a couple of flowers in this run where you'd think they might be reasonably quick because they are very clearly visible, but they are actually just not quick at all. The amount of stuff that you need to actually get to them just doesn't make it worth it.
細胞で細胞で
最後でいきます。多数決の原理。危な。
なるほどな。
Ooh.
こうやって少数派の意見は淘汰されていくんだな。
Yeah, climbing up there. Like it's been a very clean space hub for chillcito as they make their way through. Yeah, as I was saying, these little robots are not very helpful when everything's going all chaotic and stuff like that. But you really do need them to help out in some of these sections to open up these doors.
ワニがでかかったっすかね。
あともう一つ、ロケットのところでも結構序盤の方で
そうそうそう、序盤の
あったので、それかなと。
なるほど。
16分台ケースありますよね。2時間16分。
And we're going into the second last of the worlds for chillcito, whereas Bebe is just getting close to finishing up
16分何秒だったかな。
the space world.
そうなので。
I think they need a couple extra eggs to get this climb to work.
2時間16分台出る可能性ありますので。
この辺ないかな。
あります。フラワーがありますね、そこ
フラ
は。
ワー回収して。
They decided to make that slight detour to pick up
ヘリの
that
代わりにしてもいいかも。
flower because they had taken damage and they wouldn't get the flower
タイミ
for
ングずれ
full
が
health.
結構めんどくさいですからね。
And because they did make that little bit of a detour, it kind of messed up some of the cycles going through that last little segment of rotating platforms.
それじゃあ、
It made it a little bit more awkward than it needed to be, but
していこうと
oh
思いま
well,
す。
that's
次のステージ、ハスの葉に乗って
kind of one of the things
川
with
下りですね。
speedrunning. You just kind of adapt to that kind of
す
stuff.
ごく、足場をいかにうまく乗り継いでいくか、落ちずにいくか重要になってきます。ハスの葉を乗り継ぎながらフラワーを回収していきます。背景にも、この後ですね。
With this level that chillcito is on, the one on the right,
さらに奥だと。
called, very aptly called Ride the River, it is possible to get like ahead of the
こ
platforms.
こですね。
So you need to
この
be
背景に
a little bit wary
それを回収
that you don't just like overtake all of the platforms and then just jump into the water.
このステージはお風呂場みたいなの使ってる感ですか。
そうですね。 ゴール地点でもなんかお風呂のタイルみたいなものがありますからね。
Yeah, they are going to be able to pick up this extra flower off to the
戻っ
left.
たら結構戻されるんで痛いんですよね。
そうなんですよね。
そうそう。結構足場もね、滑っちゃうんで。
不安定。なんかちっちゃいハスの葉とかに乗っちゃうともう。
そうそうそう。変に動こうとするとずりってなっちゃうんですよね。
One thing that by going to that flower towards the left does, it also it makes it so the platforms move further along. Is one thing if you just go directly to the right, it is possible to do what I mentioned earlier, and that is to overtake all the platforms, and then you're just like floating over water, and just like you need to infinite flutter at that point, and at that point it's really slow. If you don't have to do an infinite flutter, ideally you don't, because it is reasonably slow to be able to be doing that.
なんか砂場とかそういうところなんです。発売前のになんか
Oh,
出てる。
another hit there from chillcito. So that is another floor that they end up missing out on. That was the health flower. Just a slightly misaligned shot. End up missing the
初耳。
この花壇とか
missing one of those fish flying out of the water towards them.
なんかそんな話。あ、僕もなんで小耳に挟んだか忘れちゃったんで。聞きかじりの知識をね。
I keep on telling myself that I should be keeping track on kind of the plus or minus when it comes to both these players and the flowers that they've been picking up.
このステージはくるくる回りながらパカパカ開く、足場を進んでいくという非常に足場が不安定なステージです。このステージも卵アクションを活用してスムーズに攻略していきます。
This level called Open Shot,
チルセイトさんはコイン
there's a lot
回収
of
されますね。
そうですね。コイン回収ルートです。
cycles that it's very much a timing thing. A lot of cycles that you need to be very aware of, and of these blocks just rotating around rather slowly.
あまりのショックに喉が潰れました。
喉が潰れてしまった。
Need to be able to kind of navigate them properly. And ideally,
この卵ジャンプを活用して
wasting the least amount of time.
パカパカブロックを待つことなく、登っていきます。
Really nice climb there from,
あ
well,
いや
nice
綺麗です
jump.
ね。
Egg jumping there from
ドヤ顔
Chillcito. Oh, manages to get that flower on the return swing. That's one fun thing about the eggs, is that they will just swing right back towards you
まあまあま
if they manage to hit anything.
あ一箇所ドヤ顔できたんで他のはセーフ理論で。
なるほどな。とりあえずこれでコインは100枚到達していますね。
Nice clean level there.
最後はつむじくんを乗り継いでいって、ゴールですね。
Yeah, Bebe going through this, they went
のところでコインを回収
a fair bit quicker because they were able, well, they're able to ignore some flowers that Chillcito stopped by to pick up, like the coin flower and such. Ooh, almost off-angled that one.
うまく決まりましたね。
So they're able to go through this just a little bit quicker. They don't have to be as worried about getting these extra
このステージもチャレンジ系のステージです。
flowers that
今回はコインを
Chillcito were picking up. And now we're coming into, I'm pretty sure, the last of the vehicles, and it's a little solar
一緒にな
car.
るとフラワー3枚獲得できま
It's a
す。
nice little solar car that
レ
you
ース中に落ちているコインや
steer
ハー
by
ト
moving to the left or
フラワー
right.
のコースを進んでいって
And
1を目指します。
Ideally, you do not go into the shade because if it's a solar car and there's no sun,
あとは
it kind of slows down a little bit.
検証されていましたが、インコースつくとコーナーの時にインコースつくと、少し速くなるらしいです。
あそうなんですよね。
And this is another one of those levels where ideally you pick up every single one of the
そう
flowers.
やってたんですけど
Luckily, it also dispenses an infinite amount of eggs, so you're okay to just fire away.
意外と効果でかいんだな。
で
言う
つける。
あ、聞いたことがある。
あとはもう一つ、加速要素
And again, with a lot of these scroll levels, you can't really speed it up, but you can definitely slow it down um, by hitting some of those shade patches,
ソーラーカー
or even just
の話ですよね。
bonking into the rear of another
そう、
one of these vehicles.
太陽に当たると速くなるらしいと。
強い太陽に当たって、
It is definitely possible to lose time. I've found ways to do it.
このコース、俺にとっては横浜なのさ。
おーっと。
おっと、
どんどん行ってってください。どんどん行ってって。
冗談じゃねえ。
冗談じゃね。
あるのが。
あとはもう一つ、序盤の方でやっていたと思いますが、ヨッシーの卵、これを敵に当てると、相手のカードがスリップするんですね。
Yeah, I don't really
それを
expect either of these two
邪
to
魔されないように、
stumble on any of the flowers here.
進んでいくのもコツですかね。
Although getting that last one at the end of over those pits,
なるべく
it can be a little bit
固定してやってますね。
a little bit dangerous, but not
どんな
too
ところでと
too much of an issue. Should be able to just blast their way through to the end, and I believe then they're on to
結構あるので、
Shadowville. I I mentioned earlier, like where we were in the haunted mansion, that this game just like
前にいて
hit some horror notes
疲れとか
for some reason,
結
like out of the
構ですよ
blue.
ね。
And this next stage is definitely one of those that definitely took me by surprise when I was first playing through this
レーン
casually.
変更がレーン変更の時に隣に疲れて
あ
ああ、そうですね。
あ、
And it can be a little bit annoying in the speedrun sense as well. If we'll see how it plays out.
ところでこのソーラーパネル、ちょっと太陽の光で若干熱くなってるので、実質ホットプレートじゃないですか、これ。
Yep.
お
Well, both of them able to pick up everything that they need.
温まってますね。
これ焼かれ
And
てる
these.
のヨッシーなんですけどね。
焼きドラゴンが
焼きドラゴン。
完成しちゃいますね。
まあ何かをきっと制御してくれてるので、ちょっと
なるほど。
バグ
I'm still interested to see how many flowers Bebe is positive.
それでは、最後のステージですね。この RTA 最後のステージ、ダークランドです。
なんかめっちゃ怖そう。
めっちゃ怖
It's a
そうです。
few at least.
ここ
Yeah, there are a lot
めっ
of
ちゃ怖いですよね。
さっきの
flowers in this last
日じゃないぐらい
last
怖い
few levels, especially in this stage. Don't be afraid of the dark.
普通に叫びましたもん、これ。
And the factory. Yeah, and in this level, there's these killer clowns for some reason
そんなにかかりはしないんで
that make an appearance.
そうですね。
ただクリアすると
結構聞こえる上になんか
結構怖いんですよね、ここ。あと、ここ、お化け屋敷のステージもなので
They kind of just came out of nowhere. They just killer clowns with these axes, and just like, all right.
ここ、ヨシ立ち止まってると、結構、ヨシを怯えてるんですよね。
ああ、確かに。
確かに怯えモーションが立ち止まらないと
Just going to damage boost through a lot of them. They can be
見えれない。
rather annoying to try and get around. You can't from an even level. You can't really jump over them, which is a bit annoying. But just like having the slightest bit of elevation over them, you can just
あえて被弾して
get beyond them.
時間を利用することに
Get
よって
over them.
突破などをしていたりしますね。
敵時間。
敵時間
What are major time losses in the rest of the run that we could see the runner's trade leads on? Earlier on, Bebe was picking up some flowers that chillcito was not. And also chillcito was kind of missing out on some flowers recently, which they'll have to pick up on in some of these last few levels. Bebe did end up making a few mistakes in some of the boss fights. Not too much to be worried about, but the few little things here and there that do add up. Yeah, here's the parade of clowns with axes coming towards the end.
いやー、国境なき手段、いつになったら、
They
まとも
should have
に
been able to pick up
戦闘
a couple of flowers. They're up to 24 at the end of this stage. I'll have to check what
あでも
Bebe is at. And that's one of the things that I found very interesting about running this game is that due to
なるほど、これが
my
できちゃう
own
か。
incompetence, not every run was the same, and you had to kind of adjust accordingly. It's like, well, because I missed out on these
して
flowers,
くれるんじゃない
I had to pick up a couple elsewhere.
チャットを読めば解決。
We'll see
それを読
how
み上げる形で。
そうです。
this finishes off.
多分ね、皆さんの方が詳
There's
しい
still a little bit to go. The final boss fight
なるほど。
isn't too much of a challenge, but can definitely
最終日ですよ。
もう最終
be a bit of a nuisance at times. But yeah, this level that chillcito is going through, it is.
確かにやってないけどね。
I just know there's like going through a museum, and you have to try and stop yourself from being
ちょっと解説
found out, which will alert security, and these little bots will come through. They are annoying to deal with. You can jump over them, sure, but if you land on them, you take damage. If you bump into them, you take damage. They're just like real nuisances. Yeah, we can see that chillcito is having to pick up a couple of extra flowers out of this stage, and I believe maybe also a couple of extras from the next stage, because they did end up missing a few earlier.
超厄介な敵ですね、本当に。
そうですね、本当。当たり判定は大きいわ。なんかちょっとジャンプしてくるわ。
こうね、ジャンプのタイミングがランダムなんですよね、これ。
Turns out just a little bit of patience can go a long way in this level. It hasn't been
そう大丈夫ですかクラワン。
too uncommon
大
for
丈夫そうです。
people to
いい
take
7枚
a little bit too much damage in this level. Much more than they would have appreciated.
3枚回収できないとラスボス前で立ち往生するっていう。
悲しい。
そうならないようにフラワーを集めてましたと。
Yeah, just wanting to be very patient through. Bebe wanted to be very patient through
解説
this segment, wanting to hold on to the full health so they can get the extra flower out of that. But this level from that chillcito is going through the factory, this is the last of the usual levels. There is a mini boss at the end of it, which is a giant cog. And after that, there will be the final boss fight with Baby Bowser. And it will come the time where something that I mentioned at the very start will become relevant, and that the rules state that it is okay to be a one-person, two-controller run. At least I'm pretty sure they'll be doing that. Unless something else has been found out over the past like half a year. It's very hard to go through this segment right here and not take one damage. Like without taking damage, there's a lot of waiting for the phases, the magma phases. So if you take damage on one of them, I think it's faster to get through it that way. I don't think there'll be any troubles for other runners. Both these two are just incredibly good at this game at this point. But we'll have to see. Going up these segments with a lot of just egg jumping and climbing. And yeah, I think Bebe is fine on the amount of flowers that they have, so they don't have to worry too much about stopping for any of them. Whereas chillcito had to. Jeez, that was a quick kill. So quick of a kill on that cog that I almost missed it. They need 30 flowers.
ラスボスですか
ラスボス挑みますよ。一体誰なんだ
誰なんだ
誰なんですかね。 そういえば解説忘れていましたが、だいぶ前の話に戻ります。
And heading into the final of the mini bosses.
あの後先にスペースランドに入ろうとすると、クラソンじいさんがまだ
Ooh, missing a couple of those shots.
集めてないじゃないかと言われて追い返されます。
厳しい。
なるほど。あのおじいさん存在してる意味なくないってずっと思ってたんですけど。
そうそうそう。
Yeah, just have to hit 3 segments on that cog and
やはり敵キャラ
that'll just fall apart. We saw how quick chillcito was able to get through that.
これおもむろに。
Yeah, and we're seeing him right now. He's making it 2 players.
2人で遊ぶ。
Literally all you need to do
友達が増えたんですか？
with the second character is like jump. Because one thing that happens when you're playing co-op is that when you are riding on the back of your partner, you have infinite
して
eggs.
いきますと、次のボスは、卵が結構
And having to do this whole, all right, switch it over to 2-player, make sure the controller is there and do all this stuff, it's much quicker to do that
プロボス
and do this fight with the infinite eggs than it is to do the fight normally. The fight takes so long normally
ヨッシーに乗ったヨッシーはなぜか
because you have all of these different phases. The amount of enemies you get to create eggs out of, you don't get a hell of a lot. So you really do appreciate the unlimited eggs
2回目も
that the quote unquote 2-player strat or 2-controller strat does bring.
次で第3形態ですね。
And this is literally the only segment. There is a second phase to this boss afterwards. But you don't need
射撃法
the second controller for it, really.
打ち放題ですからね。
Unless they've found out something.
それでは、ここで、3回目を当てて、ヒップドロップして、それで、このボスを決めたですね。いやー、おめでとうございます。
And now into
よかったよかった
Bebe just coming into the boss fight now. Chillcito coming into the second phase of the boss
携
fight.
帯がある。
第2形態ですね。ここ、ちなみにこのボス倒すと、タイマーストップですね。このボス、3回、なんでしょう、左右にある機械を使って、攻撃するのですが、3回目を、
I guess that is possible to just use the eggs to just clear through a lot of those.
またもう一度、タイマーストップのタイミングを言わせていただきますので、その時よろしくお願いします。
Yeah, a lot of this second phase is about utilizing these hammer instruments to kind of interrupt phases. You want Bowser to throw another one so you can have one on both sides, or at least have one for the incoming phase. Because once you use it and it does that big slam, it will break until they start throwing more instruments at you. And you really want one to be able to slam one of these big meteors back at Bowser, which interrupts that entire phase. A lot of the strat when it comes to the second phase, as I mentioned, you just want to interrupt specific phases.
間に攻撃を当てるとその攻撃がキャンセルされるので、その分短縮できてますね。
Yeah, and now that they have pretty much all of the stuff that they'll want, they're able to
それでは、
attach
この
these boxes of
もう
pencils.
一発当てたら、
And now it's just about finishing this off. They should be done very, very quickly.
タイマーストップはまだがチルスートさん
Just have to wear HP counters. It would be incredibly convenient. Yeah, so now they wait
終
for...
わりましたからですね。
Oh, they just have one Yoshi on both sides. Ah, that's actually real interesting. And with this final hit, that should be done.
これはここですね
And that is time there for chillcito.
2時間17
Not far behind there, Bebe, but some of those
タイム出ました
early time losses were just a little bit difficult to try
で
and
レースとしても全然
come back
離れ
from.
なくて
そうですね。
Chillcito was like very clean with a lot of the boss fights. But yeah, not too far behind though.
ありがとうございます
で敵の攻撃キャンセルして。
Should be able to interrupt the boss phases. Yeah, essentially using the 2-player,
アイテムを回収
well, the 2 controllers to get the infinite egg, so you're not having to wait for that whole phase of all the stars coming down, Um,
やっぱり解説いらないのでは？
いやいやいや、自分は
and
本当に助かります。
having to get eggs via that way, and even if you miss at that point, it's like real obnoxious. Just having infinite eggs is like real kind of neat. Makes it easy.
5回目のパンチ。
1、2、3で、ここで
And
タイ
there's
マー
that final
が
hit.
ストップですね。
And that's the race done. Just over a minute between them, which is not too bad. Both these two are the current 1 and 2 of this game, and like those times aren't too far off their world record. I think it's, how far is it off? Let me just quickly
ヨ
check.
シがお家に帰れますようにと切実な
It's not that far off
ちょっ
it.
と集めたので願いが叶えられる。
What is next? After this, it is going to be
願いがね。
a game called Shensekai Into the Depths, which I have absolutely no idea about, so I can't really tell you what it is about. But it's going to be another race, so I believe you can look forward to that.
って感じですかね。
ですかね。
そうですね。エンディングに入って
That time from chillcito was just about a minute below his world record, so pretty good times from both of them.
感想してきました。
A really good race. They were able to show off a lot of the
ですかね。先に
the fun tech in this game.
じゃあ、感想した感想
I think it's a really fun game, and
フラワーの会場
if you ever want to get into speedrunning it yourself, there is the Yoshi's Crafted World Speedrun Discord, which can be found at, well, the link can be found at speedrun.com.
リカバリーせずに済んだのがいいと
Yeah, we can direct you to all
あとは
the information
ミスもなく
that we can,
女の子が下
well, we can impart all of our wisdom if you're ever looking to speedrun this game. But yeah, thank you everyone for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
おー
I believe I'll be heading off for now, but enjoy the rest of the marathon. Thank you. Bye.